So, before we begin with Kirby's Adventure, I feel like we need to talk about the first game in the franchise, Kirby's Dream Land. Kirby's Dream Land is a 1991 Game Boy game, and Masahiro Sakurai's first game project at the young age of 21. The idea is to make an easygoing platformer that anyone could beat, since the Game Boy had a large casual audience. Famously, Kirby himself was just a placeholder character that the team grew so fond of that they decided to keep it in the game. The incredibly simple character design doesn't just mean that Kirby is an easy-to-draw, intensely relatable character, but, in a way, it is also the perfect mascot to a simple, easy-to-beat game. An equally simple, easy-to-draw character. In this game, Kirby's two main abilities are floating like a balloon, which Kirby can do indefinitely, making any player be able to avoid any pits with ease, and inhaling enemies to shoot them out of their mouth as a star-shaped projectile. Those abilities aren't necessarily what makes the game easy, as the unlockable extra mode shows how incredibly hard and punishing a game the designers can make. The regular mode, however, is a breeze to get through. It's a fun, simple, and short game, with great Game Boy visuals. It's not much compared to what the franchise would eventually become, but I feel that it needs to be mentioned as it is kind of a foundation of the franchise, being referenced in nearly every single Kirby game afterwards in some way or another. So, now with that out of the way, let's talk about its sequel. Kirby's Adventure was released 2 years later on the NES and Famicom. A 1993 title for the NES is pretty late, but Kirby's Adventure perfectly shows why the late 80s and early 90s didn't mean obsolescence for the NES, but rather a third new wave of games, one in which cartridges had way more hardware in them, with battery backup, which allows game saving, extra chips for graphics processing and sound, and much more space. Kirby has 6 megabits of data, the biggest of all official cartridges. The original Super Mario Bros. Doesn't even reach 1 megabit. For comparison, even early Mega Drive titles didn't have that much in them, capping at 5 megabits. Programmers, sound designers, and artists at this point of the NES lifespan are entirely conscious of the system's strengths and how to get the best out of them. The visuals of Kirby's Adventure are some of the best of the console. They're colorful, busy, and often very animated. Yet, they're incredibly easy to parse and have a pleasant color composition to them. Kirby's Adventure's graphics understand something very simple about the NES and Famicom. With every tile, every piece of graphic being able to display only 3 to 4 different colors, why not use that to delineate clear color boundaries? Instead of trying to get the most out of character sprites by mixing in different colors, which often makes these graphics look terrible, why not make every tile, every character, focus on just one color in their different shades? Interesting color composition occurs when different tiles and graphical elements are colored in ways that complement one another. While there are other NES and Famicom games that offer much more complex pixel art in them, Kirby's Adventure best balances being easy to read as a video game and being aesthetically beautiful. Kirby's Adventure has an incredible soundtrack. Despite the limitations of the NES and Famicom, it has a distinct Kirby sound to it, with a fast rhythm and squeaky sounds. I dare call it mischief punk. Mischief Core? I don't know, I feel like that's an okay descriptor to the feel of a lot of Kirby tracks. Anyway, Hirokazu Ando did an incredible job as the composer, especially as he had no involvement with the original Kirby's Dream Land, which was composed by Jun Ishikawa. Ando manages to compose a huge soundtrack that is completely in line with Ishikawa's work while still expanding upon it. Kirby's Adventure is the first game in the series to introduce the concept of copy abilities, which then became the main mechanic of all Kirby games afterwards, even most spin-offs. Kirby can inhale and shoot out enemies just as they could in Kirby's Dream Land. But now, when Kirby swallows certain enemies, they'll get their powers, replacing their inhale ability with something else. There are 24 copy abilities in total to use in regular gameplay, with a 25th one exclusive to the final boss battle. Most are simple and straightforward, but some have some interesting nuance from them, like the Parasol, which isn't just a weapon, but acts as a passive shield from aerial strikes and makes you extra floaty. What I find most interesting about copy abilities is that, aside from a sword duel with Meta Knight, every single one of them is entirely optional to progress in the game. You can beat Kirby's Adventure with just regular Inhale Kirby. Inhale Kirby is actually a really powerful and useful ability in itself. This makes it so players can have a big variety of playstyles, clinging more onto abilities they like better or find cooler. The game pushes you to be eclectic about abilities though, for a couple of reasons. First, getting hit once will send your ability bouncing around the screen. And if you aren't fast on getting it back, or if you let it fall into water, a pit, or onto spikes, you lose it. This will happen often and force you to use other abilities nearby. Second, almost every single room in the game is specially tailored for one or two abilities that you either get in it or right before. The second point is really important in making players not be overzealous of using only their favorite ability, as their usefulness is tied to specific situations. Wheel may seem incredibly powerful and useful in long horizontal stretches with no pits, but it becomes entirely useless in a vertical room. This, in turn, makes high jump really enticing. Each room being designed with a different ability in mind makes it so there is always a situation for every ability to feel much more useful and fun than others. Well, nearly every ability. Sorry Backdrop, you're just kinda useless. The level design of Kirby both intuitively teaches the player the strengths of each ability and entices experienced players to master them. The game does require to use specific abilities at some points in order to get to secret rooms. These often hold 1-ups or health restores, but a few levels will feature a secret switch in them. The secret switches act as optional small challenges for completionists. What I most like about the secret switches that require a specific copy ability to get to them is that abilities are usually available right before you need to use it. I recorded the footage for this video by playing from a clean file without revisiting any stage, and managed to clear the game 100%. The fact that the people who made this game had this concern to make the game be 100% cleared in one go by an experienced player is really incredible. Now, some of you may be wondering, but what about these levels in which the required ability is not present in them? Well, to you I say, mix. Mix is a special ability that you get when two enemies with copy abilities are absorbed at the same time. The game will then cycle through all the copy abilities pretty fast. Pressing a button will stop the roulette and give you that ability, though you can also wait for it to choose for you. The few switches that seemingly need you to bring an ability from another level actually have pretty easy ways to acquire Mix right before. And Mix will give you the needed ability either when you let the roulette in on its own or by pressing a button as soon as mix begins. It's a bit of a secret, but it feels like a gift for players who experiment with the game and take it seriously. Despite the game being loaded with small secrets and challenges that might require a specific ability from you, those segments being entirely optional is a key component to Kirby's accessible design. And also, with Kirby being able to float indefinitely, it means that you never get a meaningful edge with abilities like high jump, tornado, ball, fireball, or parasol that would otherwise expand your mobility and reach too drastically. Players would quickly be overzealous about those abilities, become way too frustrated when they lose them, and would feel less free to experiment with other abilities. This is why Kirby's ability to float indefinitely doesn't break the game. The copy abilities are so fun that you don't want to float, as you're slow and ironically limited in what you can do when floating. Kirby's Adventure even adds a slight attack and a faster run, because it understands that players would rather run, jump, and attack than trying to skip as much of the levels as they possibly can by floating. Once a player feels much more inclined to do that, then it means that the level just isn't very fun. Plus, floating is slow, it's inconvenient, it just leaves you a sitting duck to get hit by bonobirds. Floating mostly serves so players can escape pits they accidentally fell into. Players are then free to experiment with abilities like Tornado and Fireball without too much fear of overshooting and falling into a pit. And experiment is the key word for Kirby's Adventure. The game is a perfect balance between a toy box and a regular obstacle course platformer. It allows newcomers of the platformer genre to pick it up, have fun, and be challenged, while still giving the tools for experienced players to keep experimenting and doing new things with the game. It's okay that many players will avoid using trickier abilities like Ball, because there might be a player out there that will try to beat the entire game with it. So, because no game is perfect, this is the part that I talk about some of the issues of Kirby's Adventure and some things I feel that could have been better. As much as I think that Kirby's Adventure is really well designed, the level design starts to lose focus in the 6th world, Orange Ocean, and continues to do so until the end of the game. Seriously, who thought that this screen right here was a good idea? A few of the secret switches are hidden in very obnoxious locations. Take this area for instance. It's huge and has some optional areas here and there. The switch for this stage must be around here somewhere, so where is it? Okay, wanna know where it is? Right here. This tile is an invisible door. The obnoxious secret switches are mostly in Orange Ocean and Rainbow Resort 2. Like, there's this cannon here that you need to be really fast to get to it. Okay, I know what to do here. Alright. I gotta do this. Hold on. Maybe another ability? Yep. Oh, I almost got it, come on! Fuck! Come on, yes, come on! Yes! Oh, that there is to it? Well, at least now you know not to waste your time. Also, it's a bit frustrating how you drop your ability every time you get hit. Yes, it helps the abilities feel more fleeting and have players not cling onto one or two favorites, but every time you get hit is a bit too much, breaking the flow of the game. Once every 2 hits would have already made the game feel a lot smoother, especially for newcomers. Another issue is that the Famicom was nearly a decade-old system at this point, and Kirby's Adventure does way too much for it to keep up. The game then suffers from some slowdown, and while most of the slowdowns are unpredictable situations that are easy to account for, like every time you use Spark, the situations that you didn't predict make the game feel unresponsive at times. The feeling of unresponsiveness is coupled with the fact that in Kirby's movements, there are some animations that can't cancel into other actions. For instance, when Kirby falls from a great height, they'll face downwards. This state allows Kirby to bonk their head against enemies to defeat them without taking damage themselves. But when Kirby hits the ground like this, Kirby will bounce off slightly from the floor. And only when they hit the floor again, you're able to jump again or attack. It's a cute little animation, but for a game that usually plays so smoothly and instantly, it really messes up your flow. If the performance issues of the original game bother you, thankfully there are some ways around it. Kirby's Adventure was remade on the Game Boy Advance, where it was rebranded as Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. The new character sprites and animations are smooth, expressive, and colorful. The game runs without a hitch this time around too, and it features new multiplayer minigames. The game even fixes the backdrop ability, making it much more useful and fun to use. And it even builds a small new level section specially designed for it. This all sounds pretty much ideal, right? Well, you might have noticed something off right away, and it's the backgrounds. Kirby's Adventure's backgrounds focus on 3D geometric shapes on cartoonish hyper-stylized environments. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland goes for a different aesthetic, painterly and surreal with muted colors, reminiscent of Impressionist paintings. It's like two completely different people were given the prompt to draw a dreamlike landscape. The game also controls differently. Most of the times that's not necessarily better or worse, just different. Kirby feels slightly faster and snappier most of the time, but a bit more slippery and loose too. Abilities like Tornado and Ball handle very differently. And some abilities have way too much wind up to their attacks, a downside to the snazzier character animation of the game. Whether those changes are better or worse, I think, depends more on each person's familiarity with each game more than anything else. I personally feel that the remake loses a lot of the original game's charm by changing the aesthetic so drastically. Plus, I really prefer how the original game controls. Still, the better performance here is really nice. If only there was a version of the original game that had no slowdown.
Arika.
Arika. Yes, that Arika. Responsible for Street Fighter EX and Tetris The Grand Master, remade Kirby's Adventure from the ground up as part of the 3D Classic series for the 3DS. I feel comfortable saying that this is the best version of Kirby's Adventure. For those of us who like how old video games render their graphics, some of the differences here can be off-putting at first, with smooth fades and a few transparency and gradient effects. But rest assured that this version plays better and smoother, while still being faithful everywhere that it needs to be. The only small downside here is that some fun glitches in the original game cannot be reproduced. Kirby's Adventure, more than any other game, really taught me the importance of game design. Many people, when interested in game design or making games, are interested in the pitch of a game, in the ideas of the key mechanics and features that will entice other people to play it. An idea for a game that you can absorb abilities from enemies and freely use them is something that, honestly, anyone can come up with. What truly makes good game design is how to balance enemies both being obstacles and strong suggestions of what ability to use next. Good game design is coming up with abilities that will be useful in some situations and undesirable in others, and how to balance that. Good game design is crafting these mechanics in service of creating a good experience for both new and experienced players, not just because the idea of being able to use dozens of special powers sounds cool. It's the stuff that you can't put in the back of the box or brag about, and it's the stuff that I'm interested in exploring.